Hello and welcome back to Paper Traders. I am your co-host Eric and I'm here with Danny Mack and we are two average Joes trying to beat the market. Our mission statement is basically that we have $5,000 that we're going to paper trade on and we're going to see if we cannot make money playing the stock market. So hello and welcome to our 6th episode.
Yeah, welcome.
And
I'm excited. We have a lot to cover, I think, today. So, let's. I think let's just dive right into it. I don't know about you.
well, first, let's go a couple things out of the way. We are streaming on all sorts of platforms: Twitch, Ustream, YouTube, VK Live, Live EDU, Vaughn Live, CaveTube, Africa TV, YouNow, FC2 Live, Periscope, and Twitter.
We're pretty much anywhere you can find a video or a podcast. We're probably there for your taking. So
be sure to go and like, subscribe, and comment and get involved in this. And as we are streaming, we are taking any live questions that any of you may have, or any other comments that you might have, any other information that you might want us to look into. We do have a couple things that we're going to release at the end of the episode. I feel like teasing it too early would be, wouldn't keep you guys tuned in. So
yeah,
we'll get
stay
to that
tuned.
later.
We got a lot to cover today, like I said at the top here. So. I think we should just jump right into it. We had a lot of earnings, obviously, over the past few weeks here.
So much earnings.
The big ones, obviously, being the FANG stocks, and Apple was the last one to report for them. So we thought we'd just kind of run over the quick basics of what happened in that earnings call on Tuesday and let you investors kind of decide for yourself if it's worth investing or maybe it's worth us ourselves putting some money into it.
It's at least worth a conversation here.
Exactly.
I mean, Apple is definitely one of the larger FANGs. Apple's got lots of things always in the pipeline. Although I am an Apple user, and I do like Apple products a lot of the time because of their consistency and quality.
Yeah, and they're user friendly. So
I feel like they've kind of been chasing their tail the last couple of years. They haven't really innovated much. They've been following what Google does, or
a little bit. I mean, we've talked about this here in the office. I've been an Apple person for probably my whole life. I grew up with the iPhone coming out when I was in middle school, so it was kind of like my first introduction to a phone. So Apple was kind of like the way to go.
You're making me feel really old right now, Daniel.
Right. So, I mean, I had a flip phone for like emergencies when I was a kid, because obviously your parents want to get in touch with you. But anyways, Apple was kind of the one to go to. So now I've actually found myself moving towards Microsoft computers. And I'm loving it. I think Microsoft is making a really good operating system and product now that they're able to compete. And I don't know if it is, like you said, Apple kind of lacking a little bit in that innovation side, the way, I don't want to say, it was Steve Jobs, but I kind of feel like it was his kind of mentality and backbone to that company. He brought a lot to it. So.
And wanting to just take risk, I feel Apple hasn't really taken a risk on anything in a while. They're like, oh, well, the phone works. We're not going to mess with it.
Right.
And I feel like especially now with the Chinese market, they're in real big trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, the Asian market now is opening up 5G, where we're just kind of rolling it out here.
Yep, we just kind of touched it the last 2 months or so.
And Apple doesn't. Well, there's 3 actually cities that are going to be getting 3G or 5G today. Washington, and a couple other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, the Chinese market's enormous, and they have 5G, and Apple's not going to have a 5G phone for a year. That's gonna have to hurt them.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, Apple iPhone sales have dropped. So
big surprise, the Asian market's got to be really digging into their sales share like a ton.
Well, yeah, in the past, Apple iPhone sales were over 50% of their revenues. Now it's actually under 50% for the first time since 2012, which is a huge deal for their company. But Tim Cook on their call was kind of pushing towards their wearables, so their iPhone or their their iPods or their EarPods. I'm not sure what they're called.
The AirPod.
The AirPods. So they have the AirPods, they have the Apple Watch, and the Beats headphones, and those sales are up 13%. So that's a big jump for them. I misspoke. Their Apple wearables are actually up over 50%.
Oh, really?
It's their services that are up 13%. And their services are like all their subscriptions, iTunes,
iMusic, and everything else
which they kind of all separated just recently. So, yeah, I mean, they're declining in phone sales, but it looks like they're making up for it in other places, showing, hey, look, we know the iPhone's a big deal for us, but we're making sure that our company is well-rounded and we're pushing other big products. So, they did overall pretty well. Their revenues came out, it looks like $53.8 billion versus the $53.3 billion. And this pushes their revenue growth towards the positive after 2 quarters of decline. So this was a great report for Apple. People are pretty excited about this. I think their stock was up about 4 or 5%.
Yeah, it's showing 8% right now on the website.
Oh, 8%.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
At
Okay.
217.53 a share. You know, we got a B value score, a B growth score, a C momentum score, and a B VGM. So I mean, I kind of feel like Apple's going to be one of those blue chips that you kind of sit on if you get into it. It's actually kind of cheap right now, I think. Like 217, I feel like it's going to shoot up pretty quick with this news.
Yeah,
but
what's the PE? It looks like forward PE of 18. So that's really not too bad for a growth company like this that is going to be able to bring in, like we said, a lot of hopefully innovation in the future.
and I mean, it's paying a 3% dividend. So I mean, that's also kind of nice.
They're keeping their investors around, that's for sure. I mean, when you're a growth company and you're paying a 3% dividend, that's pretty nice to have in your portfolio as a kind of like a safety net, I would say.
They're just below the top third of their industry rank too. They're 100 out of 256. They're bottom 38 actually of their sector rank. They're 10 out of 16. So
Yeah, and
I don't
they've
know.
raised their guidance, so they went from 61 to 64 billion, and the expectation was only 60.1 billion. So they're pushing along, they're chugging along as one of those FANG stocks here, and investors were happy about it. I mean, and they were rightfully so.
you know, I feel like this is a conversation that we should stick on. You know, Apple is something that both you and I really know very well because we both are pretty intimately tied into their system.
Yep, I have their phone, I have an iPad, I have a MacBook.
I've got a MacBook Air too. I
yeah.
mean, it's one of those things where I'm very tied in. I'll be honest with you, Danny. I'm not very hopeful where they're going. They just announced that new Behemoth Mac. Have you heard about this thing? They're kind of like
Nope.
bringing the tower. I'm going to try to see if I can bring it up while we're
I
talking
haven't even
here.
heard of it because, again, like I said, I've started, like, I have a bunch of Mac products, but in this past year or two, I've just found myself moving towards a self-built computer that runs on an operating system from Microsoft.
Yeah, here you go. If you bring it up, I've got it. It looks like a cheese grater. I remember people making fun of it. So if you see here, folks, you got the coming this fall. This
Oh my
big
goodness.
dynamic. But look at
It
that
is a cheese grater.
front end. Yeah. Well, obviously it's all for airflow, but I mean, they just didn't really think about how it looked exactly like a cheese grater, I guess.
I don't think they care.
But I mean, apparently this thing's going to be a workhorse, and you know what? I'm sure
oh my God, look at
video
that thing.
professionals. Yeah, they have a little video here going yet.
That thing's disgusting looking.
I'm sure for video professionals, it's going to be probably amazing. Let's see if they have the other stats about it.
To be honest, it looks like their first generation
Look at
computer.
how you have to tear open the top. Look at
Yeah.
this.
I think that's just to kind of show the inside and maybe that you can upgrade it.
Oh no, that's probably how you open the case. That's how they open the case.
That's how
As
you
I'm scrolling down, actually, it's kind of cool. It's putting the case back on. So you unlock it, and then it opens up. Oh,
So maybe their innovation is just moving towards higher
yep, there it goes. It's
quality
opening up.
computers.
Well, I mean, they've always okay. So I was actually an old tower user. Like 28 cores of power. Geez,
That's ridiculous.
yeah. I used to be an old tower user. I had an old tower that was, I can't even remember how many gigahertz, but it was like one of the original ones that they had, and it was a beast. I actually sold it, if you can believe that, like only a couple of years ago.
Someone
And
actually
it
bought it.
still worked. Yeah, there was somebody who was working on a project that had to use old software and
Alright.
old technology to try to capture their footage, so they had a use for it. But that thing never had an issue in all the years I had it. And I bought it in, I don't know, let's say 2006, 2005, 2006.
Forever ago
So I
in
mean, like, yeah,
computer
the thing
age.
never had a problem in terms of comparing an Apple's lifespan versus a PC's lifespan. I mean, I feel like that alone shows you there's just no comparing the quality of the product. But since I had that tower, they've moved over to a system that is now compatible with the IBM system. So now you can kind of cross the computer with whatever system you want. If you want,
Right.
to have Windows, you can put Windows into it, and that all has to do with the chips. And I don't know, man. I've heard this thing is going to be super expensive, like super expensive.
From what I am experienced with paying for their computers, their laptops are like $2+ grand. I'd imagine this Behemoth, you called it? What is it?
Beast. I just call
Beast?
it a beast.
The
This thing
beast?
is just a beast.
Okay, it's probably going to be around in the
1.5
3,000.
terabyte of memory.
I'm sorry.
That's just memory.
but this is all stock too. Like this is how it comes.
Well, no,
right?
I'm sure they're probably just talking about maybe even the base model. I don't know. Maybe this is the advertisement, so maybe they're talking about like a jacked up model. But like, yeah, you can see here they go all the way from 28 core down to 8 core. So who knows which one actually allows you 1.5 terabyte of memory? I'd have to assume that's their Ferrari model.
Yeah,
But yeah, see,
that's what it sounds like.
Autodesk Maya, Logic Pro. Pardon me. Build time. I don't know why they're quoting Photoshop on here. That's insane. That product, that product doesn't really eat up much memory at all. But the dot and the Maya definitely does. So I mean, compared to an older render, I mean, 4.2 times faster. That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. 8 PCI Express slots. I mean, this thing is very impressive, very expensive, but I'm sure people in the video world, animation world, are going to eat this up. Yeah.
But this is, you know what? This is kind of like the forefront of pushing the boundaries of what computers were able to do. Because, I mean, kind of going off of a side note here, you have companies like Microsoft and Sony PlayStation who are creating now these gaming systems that are pushing the boundaries of what they're able to fit inside that tiny little box. They're talking about having.
I feel like that's apples and oranges, though, when you're talking
Not-
about the two.
Well, I'm so
I mean,
I bring.
one's specifically for gaming, and this one's meant for creating essentially games.
Well, I bring it up because they're able to put such mass amounts of power into such small real estates. In the past, you would have to have huge server rooms and stuff to have such computers with that type of power. And
You're just talking about expandability, though, right? Like, I mean,
well, I think what I'm saying is I think this is kind of where computer and the future for right now is, and it's pushing the boundaries of what they can do with these computers. Maybe it's not innovative where they're bringing brand new technology and brand new cool things to the market like an iPhone was.
yeah, this
back
feels
in
like
the day.
this is just trying to jack a computer up. I feel like this is trying to flex muscle.
Yeah,
Like, oh, we
push the
can build a
boundaries.
super beast that'll cost you, as much as a Cadillac, but you'll be able to work an 8K video, which everybody's got an 8K TV. I don't know about you, Danny. I've got an 8K sitting around at home.
I got about 3 of those.
Yeah, one right above my bed. Yeah, I mean, this is insane. I think this is just a point of muscle flexing in a way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So they have this like new monitor. I actually heard about this monitor. The stand alone costs something like $1,000.
Yeah.
Not even the monitor, just the stand.
What? Wait, no, you're kidding.
Oh no, I'm not kidding. They were making fun of this all
I thought
over the net when it was first announced. Like,
I thought you
yeah.
meant like the actual standalone
No,
monitor was
the
1,000.
stand for the monitor is like $1,000.
Gosh.
But yeah, I mean, 4 TB of storage. I mean, that's actually not that impressive, but it is actually SSD, so that's actually pretty impressive. And if you don't know what SSD is, I mean, that's
Solid state drive, it's pretty much instantaneous.
the fastest possible way to do it. I will say that I am a little disappointed to see they're going to continue with their Thunderbolt battle. Like, jeez, Apple,
well,
give it up.
yeah, to
if
be
Sony,
honest,
if
the
Sony
whole-
proved anything back in the day, that making proprietary products like that is just a loss. And
Well-
the difference between USB 3 and Thunderbolt was so minimal.
Yeah, and
Why would I pay the extra $100 for a Thunderbolt cable?
It's a pain in the
Thunderbolt. Why
butt.
can't you just get USB 3.0.
when I have 3 USB-Cs on my MacBook Pro, it is a pain in the butt when you have to hook up multiple things, whether it be a mouse or a hard drive or
And usually you don't have enough ports, so you got to get expansions.
no, yeah, I bought 2 expansions,
Right.
so it is what it is. But yeah, it is a pain in the butt that they kind of force that upon you. So they take some steps back, but I think they'll take forward steps in the future. I mean, like we said, they're doing great with revenues and everything, and their other wearables and services. So they're showing that the Apple iPhone is not going to be their standalone product, and they don't want to kind of hold on to it as their only one that's going to hold the company up. So. I think that's pretty much kind of how they're gonna roll with the punches. So
It's I don't know. I have a really hard time, honestly, kind of believing in Apple right now. I feel like they're flexing muscle unnecessarily. Like I said, 8K. Like I understand 8K is the next revolution, but I feel like this kind of like goes all the way back to like the progress of technology. Like you can get so far ahead to a point where you're not going to be able to actually like disseminate this stuff. Like people are barely getting on board with 4K. I feel. Most news stations haven't even converted over to 4K.
yeah, and like you said, the technology it's very expensive, and you can't see kind of the everyday person throwing that in their home. So for a TV station to migrate to 4K and them to put that expense on themselves is silly. So it might even jump. It might jump right to 8K. It might go.
No,
right
I mean
over.
it has to mathematically.
What do you
'Cause
mean
it has
by
to
that?
double? So
By
yeah,
the frame rates. and-
exactly. Well, no, the actual resolution has to double. That's how it works. So
Okay.
HD was considered like 0. So obviously this math doesn't work. But then or 2K, right? So HD is 2K. 4K is now the next iteration. Next iteration of that is 8K. And oddly enough, when I was in the advertising world, I was actually working in 8K.
Yeah, because when I
Years
run a
ago.
4K on a 1080 screen, it doesn't fit. Like it physically has to have those bars for the aspect ratio to look normal. Like you know what I mean?
Are you talking about like wide frame, like Cineframe?
Well, even if it's a full screen. So if I put like a video game that is on a 4K monitor in 1080, it just doesn't fit resolution wise on the screen. Like it has some black bars on
Oh,
it.
that sounds like a settings issue.
Oh,
Because if it's
really?
supposed to be a
Okay.
1080 by 10, 1920 by 1080, then it should be adjustable. Like, yeah, that's a different issue. We can talk about that later. But in
Okay.
terms of 8K, 8K is, not new technology, but it isn't catching on because it's expensive yet, just like everything else. I feel like 4K is just kind of starting to get a little bit
Right.
of love. So I don't know. I don't want to spend too much more time on this,
No, no,
only
no, no.
because of
There's
the
a
fact
lot
that,
more
yeah,
news going on here than just Apple. So
let us know in the comments, guys. Well, if you guys want to talk Apple, me and this guy have like a ton of information. So I just want to say real quick to Mark Sobere. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. He's asking who is that photo, the person in the photo behind me. And I would like to give you credit for finally somebody catching on to this.
first person.
This is Jeffrey Skilling, and if you don't know who he is, you can check out on the internet who he is. He's a former CEO and. Probably, Danny, you're probably too young for it, but
Yeah, me. I don't.
yeah,
I'm not.
we're not going to go too far into it. But if you feel like looking it up, it's Jeffrey Skilling, and please keep tuned because there's a new
There's a
CEO
new guy up
on the
there,
wall
or gal
every day.
taking that wall and showing them off. So check them out.
I just find it fun personally. It's
Yeah.
a little fun thing, and you're the
It's-
first person to catch on. So bully for you, Mark Sobere.
All right. Well, kind of moving on from those, I guess, hefty talks of how Apple's doing, we move into more hefty kind of things that are happening in our economy and world economy because you have both trade talks happening and you have the Fed rate pretty much
And
coming
job
out
numbers,
today
yeah.
with their decision if they're going to cut the interest rate. So, Eric, you have a little bit more on that stuff with the job numbers. Do you want to fill us in on that?
Well, I mean, so the ADP numbers came out, and they had said that there were more government jobs, so it was less than expected. I could pull up the whole article if we need. Off the Zacks website, I like to show how we get all this information. So,
And those are good numbers because that'll kind of help the decision with the Fed on the interest rate cut. So I mean, these numbers are definitely helping that decision.
yeah, I feel like all these things are kind of all playing into each other, except for maybe the trade talks. The trade talks are probably having a bit of a impact on other forms of the government or in forms of the economy. But the jobs number is a good sign. The more jobs you have, more people working, and
course.
unemployment rate is lower. And then you take the Fed rate and the cut into play, and that means businesses and everybody else can have a little bit more money to invest or spend.
Yeah, it
So-
overall helps the market.
Right. So
it's
you might
a
have
great
more
thing.
jobs coming up that'll become available because Jim's what's his name? We'll call it Forrest Gump Shrimp Company
Yeah.
decides to hire 4 more people. Well, now they have the extra dollars to do so.
Exactly.
So I feel like those do play in. If you go on the Zacks website, you can see that there's a story right here, the rate cut to perk up. And then the other story that I was touching on was the AWS, 731 ADP payroll story. So you can get the whole story there on Zacks.com.
Yeah, and it's a lot going on, like you said, with the Fed rate kind of coming out. It affects a lot of different companies and sectors. It's one that I've kind of watched now because it'll affect both the utilities and the realty sector. Obviously, utilities is a very hefty commodity kind of thing where it will get affected by the interest rates, and then the realty with the interest rates going down, they will be able to kind of cut costs on their building productions and stuff. So a lot of different, not just the stock market in general, but a lot of different sectors are going to be impacted, which we'll take a little bit look later today. But just kind of a side note, going off of that, there's also the trade talks, like he said, that are going on, but again, nothing much happening. Yeah, it's a bunch of
No news.
yeah, it's getting crazy because this is what the 6th or 7th or 8th round. I don't even know at this point. But again, they came to no trade talk or no trade deal. They said it was constructive. I don't know what that means. I don't know what was said in this meeting. But they said that it will resume back in September. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see again.
Yeah,
I
just got
don't
to
know how
wait it
many
out.
times they can meet without coming to an agreement of some sort.
Something's got to give.
Yeah, I mean, you would think the world economy is just going to be like kind of up in arms, kind of what's going on. A lot of impact of American companies over C's getting hit. So I mean,
Oh, and import costs. I just had read that Sony PlayStation said that they're gonna have to raise the cost of the PlayStation if the tariffs continue.
oh great. So that $300 piece of equipment is now going
Oh,
to be like
300. I think the
500.
new one's $400.
Oh,
So
is
you're
it
talking,
really?
yeah, it'd probably be like 450. They might even add an extra 100 to it, so it could become a
Okay.
$500 machine then.
Yeah, I haven't bought a console in quite some time. So
Well, they have the new Sony 4K PlayStation Pro. Like a year after they replaced that with the PlayStation 4. So I mean,
yeah, see what they come out with this year or next year
yeah,
or whenever.
the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, and then they have the Xbox Scarlet or something like that. So
I know that we have a
lot of-
listener out there, Sean Battle, who would be very happy to hear that I'm probably getting off the console world and joining the PC master race, as they call
Yeah.
themselves.
I've joined. It's a great way to go, man. Gaming is in PC form is kind of the future, in my opinion. But there's a lot of different arguments on that point. So
No,
I mean,
I'm not a huge gamer, but just because of the fact that it's constantly annoying and I do need a new machine,
yeah,
dual duty, and at the same time I'm not paying out the nose for it.
you might as
So,
well.
Anyway,
All right.
what
Well-
else we got going on here, Danny?
That was kind of about it. I mean, you had a few things that I would touch on, maybe like GE. GE did pretty darn good in their earnings report. They're making a big kind of comeback. A lot of investors are jumping on that bandwagon. They're up about 40% year to date, and their earnings are just continuing to kind of jump. Here, I'll bring up my screen here and show you kind of the detailed estimates as we kind of look at them down here at the bottom. As you can see, literally their Zacks consensus estimate for their earnings is just jumping 28, 29, 118 for next year. Or I'm sorry, 118 for this year. And then you go down here, you see that the earnings estimates are moving up. You have 12 cents, 16 cents, the current year at 61 cents, and next year looking at 73. So positive movement going forward for this company. Oh yeah, and then you also had Spotify, who I wanted to kind of just briefly touch on. It's something that we use on a daily basis here in the office for our podcasts and stuff. So they reported pretty mixed earnings. They had 47 cents per share on the expected 51 cents. But their sales did come in a bit better year over year, coming 2.4% better at $1.87 billion.
Spotify is just going to grow.
Yeah,
That whole streaming world. I mean,
it's a growth play for sure too.
And you got to look at what the younger kids are doing. I don't know a single kid that buys music anymore.
No.
They're all streaming, whether it be Spotify, Pandora,
Right.
or iMusic, whatever it is. I mean, they're all streaming. None of them have any hard copies anymore.
No, which is kind of, in my opinion, depressing. I have the nostalgic of buying CDs and records still. It's something I personally do. And still will do for the rest of my life, probably. I love being able to listen to the physical records. They, in my opinion, sound different, depending on what you're listening on. But that's just to each his own. So, but
I knew we
that,
had a hipster in the office somewhere. I think we just found
I can't
him.
help myself. I'm an audiophile, so I really enjoy when I find an album that I like and know that I'm going to listen to for a long, long time. I'll end up buying it. So,
All right, so you know what time it is, Danny.
What time is that?
It's time to head to the battleground.
Uh-oh.
Fight!